So, is there a type of story that you can tell of the combat that you experienced while you were enlisted?
Well, I think there's a few stories, I guess. There were definitely different types of combat. I did 2 deployments to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan through a period of 6 years. So combat in Iraq and Baghdad was a lot different than combat in Bellenbai, which is southern Afghanistan, which is kind of more country. Something you want to know about it, or
just how did it make you feel while you were in it?
Well, when I was 18, well, when I was still a senior here at Grand Junction High School, I was 18 years old. May 3rd is when I turned 18. About 4 days after that, I went over to Denver and enlisted into the Army in MEPS. Finished out my high school year and spent the summer here before I was shipped off. Went through basic and airborne school, and then right out of the gate, I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, where a bus came by when I was in processing into the base, and they asked me who wants to go overseas. They asked a group of us who wants to go on deployment. So a few of us out of the group that just got to Fort Lewis raised our hand. We got on this bus, and 3 months later, we were in Baghdad, Iraq. We met with a unit that was already there. I spent about 9 months. By that time, I spent my 19th birthday in Iraq. It's kind of interesting. My mother would send me jars of peanut butter because I love peanut butter, so she sent me jars of Jiffy peanut butter in a spoon. I was in a Stryker brigade, so I don't know if you know what Stryker is, but it kind of looks like a tank, but it has wheels on it instead of tracks. They're pretty quiet, so what we would use them for is we have a team, and we'd have 3 strikers, and they'd insert us into the city of Baghdad because I was in a reconnaissance unit. So instead of like a normal infantry platoon that has, 30 to 40 soldiers, we had an element of about 19 to 20, and we'd only operate at night. So they would insert us, and we would go, and we had some different equipment, and we'd try and find key people within the city that we were after, and we would go apprehend them. Being 19 years old, 18, 19 years old, doing that with a lot of older experienced guys was a lot of fun. A lot of interesting stuff, I guess. One story was we were going down it had become daybreak, so we were working through the night because we worked from 9 o'clock at night to sometimes 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, we're coming back. And in Baghdad, a lot of the houses are, what you would think of like made out of mud or sand, or concrete, very Middle Eastern. And we're going down the city, and we come across this house. It's made of wood, and it's very Western looking. It looks like something you'd pull off right here out of a community here. And it was just set in the middle of this Baghdad community. It just looked super out of place. Yeah, man, it's super interesting. So we stopped and went over and talked to the guy. He ended up being he grew up in Baghdad, Iraq. And in the 80s, he went off and he went to Oxford and became a professor in engineering. And was an engineer and moved back to Iraq after that. Was an engineer there. And he had some interesting stories. He talked about how, when Saddam was in power, there was a lot of there was the rule of law was still in place. Though he was kind of a dictator, people could go out at night and feel safe, or people could go on the lakes and they could boat and recreate, and it was fun, and there was a nightlife, and it was pretty normal to a Western world. After the United States came in and eliminated Saddam, the power was up for grabs at that point, so everything kind of turned to chaos, and there was no organization. People, their light switch wouldn't always turn on, and they wouldn't have clean running water all the time because none of that structure was there anymore because America took away their leader. Even though he was a dictator that needed to be taken away, we didn't really have a plan in place to set it up for somebody to take over. So that's kind of interesting listening to him. What else? We had an interpreter with us all the time. To be an interpreter, we get local nationals. You're supposed to be 18 years old. But we had this guy, he was a kid. He claimed he was 18 years old and had some documents saying they told him that he was no older than 15 or 16, named Roy. And everywhere we would go, Roy would come with us. And just like any other 16-year-old, he had a fascination with wanting to be in the Army and wanting to be in the military. So he was a pretty good kid and knew English really well. He learned English by reading American books. That's how he learned English. You have questions for me, I guess?
When you came back, did you have any positive or negative side effects?
Yeah, both. I mean, it wasn't like the movies, like you see in the movies where people come back and they have stringent PTSD. I mean, we had our fair share of interesting incidents, I guess you'd say. Our fair share of firefights and being in combat. I'd say the most intense firefight I was a part of, I wasn't directly in. I watched it happen because being that we were a reconnaissance element and we were there to sneak around and kind of apprehend individuals in a more covert manner. We were in this building structure and there was another infantry unit and with their big element, they were coming down the street and there was an enemy element and they were further down the street and this firefight erupted between this American force and this enemy force. And we're right in the middle, and the American force doesn't know we're there occupying this building. So they got their 50 cals mounted on their trucks and their Mark 19s, which are, semi-automatic grenade launchers, and the enemy has their Dishkas and their automatic PKMs and AK-47s. And we were watching. It's almost like a fireworks show, or like in Star Wars when you see the stormtroopers come in, these lasers are going by. It's almost like that going off. You're watching them firing at each other, and you're stuck in the middle wondering, hopefully they don't turn on the building, either side, and start lighting our building up. So that was pretty intense. But coming back, differences were, you have structured traffic. Overseas they have traffic, but everybody just kind of does their own thing when they're driving. Here it's, you have laws of the road and you have to obey the laws, otherwise the officer down the street's going to pull you over and give you a ticket. Where overseas they don't have that, so everybody just drives pretty crazy. Don't have to worry about roadside bombs. That's a plus. That was good. Life is definitely, life in a lot of ways in America is harder to some degree when you're not deployed, because when you're deployed overseas, you don't have the responsibilities like, you're going to get fed. You don't have to worry about buying food. You don't have to worry about where you're going to sleep. You're going to sleep. There's some place you're going to sleep. You don't have to worry about making your car payments or paying your rent. You don't have to worry about your normal bills like you do when you are back here. So coming back and having all that responsibility again of making sure everything's paid on time, or I don't know. Make sure your house is kept and all that good stuff. You have to make sure you keep up on that. As far as negative side effects, I didn't really have too many negative side effects. I was 18, 19 years old in the war zone, and that's kind of what I wanted to do when I was a kid. So yeah, that was my first deployment anyways. My second deployment in Iraq, we were in the Muqtadiya area, so we were farther north in Iraq. And that was a lot more low key. We were kind of up in more of a village type setting. A lot of, I guess you would think like ranching communities and agriculture communities. And that time I was still part of the reconnaissance unit. By that time I was a sniper in the reconnaissance unit. So I got to do a lot of overwatch for key leader engagements. So people would come in, especially bigwigs would come in, and they would see the growth of the population, or we'd move down to different cities. And like General Odierno came one time. I don't know if you know who General Odierno was, but He was the FORSCOM commander. So the FORSCOM, he was the commander of the whole Iraq War. He was the main guy for the whole Iraq War, the head honcho. And he eventually became the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Obama, which is, there's Obama and he's got his Joint Chiefs right underneath him. And they're the ones that advise him on like military stuff and things like that. Anyway, so when he was the FORSCOM commander, he wanted to come down and check out, how the economy's doing within the city. So he goes down and he meets with the generals of the Iraqi generals and the Iraqi army, and they walk through the city. And it's a big deal because obviously you don't want your general who's in the middle of a war zone getting killed. So they deployed us early, and we went out to the city, and we find different. We knew the route that the general was going to take, so we would go sit in early, and we would observe the route. So we made sure nobody planted IEDs, we made sure nobody was setting up for an ambush, things like that. And we would overwatch the general and his posse as they conducted their meet and greets with the Iraqi army. And that's kind of cool. It was interesting. I personally sat up in this 3-story building, and it was gross. A lot of buildings are dilapidated and kind of falling apart, and they're abandoned. And this one was full of garbage, like diapers, and it was pretty gross. But it was a great place for somebody to be a sniper. So I sat in my sniper buddy and I sat there for a day and a half in this dirty diaper, trash-ridden building, and looked through a hole not much bigger than a basketball, overwatching this avenue that we knew his general was going to take to keep him safe. So that was pretty interesting. And after that, we got to meet him. He gave me a big coin. So if you're a commander, things like that, they have what's called challenge coins. And when you're in the military, if you get a challenge coin from a commander, it's kind of prestigious. And then the higher ranking commander you are, the more the challenge coin is worth. And when you get a challenge coin, if that, at the time when I got it, he was a 4-star general. That's it's the highest general you can attain. But when you get a coin, it kind of progresses with their rank as well. So at the time he was a 4-star general, and then he again made Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I got that in my house. It's pretty cool, just for doing that Overwatch mission for him. What else? We got, being out there, the Iraqi enemy, they're pretty ingenious when it comes to building stuff. We'd be on our COP, and they know how to build rockets, things like propane tanks and things like that. So one time we had a meeting, and thank God we were all in this meeting at one part of our compound, and we're all together. And our living quarters were separated, and they between their rockets and their homemade mortars, they'd launch them in every once in a while, but this time they built a homemade rocket out of a propane tank, or a couple propane tanks, and it landed square on top of our sleeping quarters, which thank God nobody was sleeping in at the time. We were all in this meeting. But blew that apart, and I got some shrapnel in my house that came from that. It was kind of neat. The rest of the time we did a lot of key leader engagements where we'd go out and we'd assist different units. Like they built a medical facility for some kids and for a population it's more designed for kids to go get medical attention. Help deliver some food to their key leaders, and their key leaders would disseminate to their populations. Yeah, and that was my second deployment. My third deployment was to Afghanistan. We're about an hour and a half south of Kandahar. Kandahar is the biggest city in southern Afghanistan, so we were just south of that along Route 1. So Route 1, it's the main service route from Pakistan into Afghanistan. So it was a pretty big supply chain for illegal weapons coming in from Pakistan and going to Al-Qaeda and whoever else in Afghanistan. So we were down there trying to cut those kind of ties in the south. At that time, we were again another small element. It was a joint mission between, so there was a few of us, some Green Berets. There was an Army Air Combat Controller who's like he's an Air Force Air Combat Controller who's like, it's like one of their special operations guys, a couple Navy EOD guys, and they put us all together. And they put us in the middle of these 3 villages, and they want us to go kind of disrupt this main service route and get with the locals to try and help, stop the sneaking in of illegal weapons and things like that. So we did that for 6 months, and it was interesting being able to stay, live together with a few different branches of service and discuss, our tactics versus theirs, and come together and work through some problems. That was probably the most intense fighting I've ever had. Being at one of the Middle East 3 villages, almost on a daily basis, we take contact at our little base alone. They'd rain in mortars, or we're kind of surrounded by grape fields, and grape fields, how they do it, they're kind of big ditches. So it's great cover and concealment for the bad guy if they want to sneak up on you and shoot at your compound. So they just get in these little ditches and get real close and start kind of shooting at us. So we'd have to fight from our compound a lot. So that was a little intense. Luckily, we were pretty fortunate not to have anybody killed, but we got a Navy EOD guy. He blew up their whole job, their whole purpose is to sweep for landmines as we're moving down. So if we have a 20-man element, we go on foot a lot because of the terrain. So they'd go ahead of us and they'd try and sweep for mines or IEDs, make sure that we don't get blown up. One of our trucks was coming back from a supply route, and I don't know if you know what like an MRAP is or whatnot, but it's like a big heavy-duty armored truck. We ran over an IED, and this IED was so big that it lifted this 18,000-pound truck off the ground and moved it 30 feet without touching the ground and landed it on its side. Luckily, all the guys they were hurt, but none of them died. So when that happened, I was on the COP, and a few of us were on the COP, which is an outpost, and we're like, oh man, we gotta help them. So this Navy EOD guy who was with us, he's trying to get to the truck and sweeping for landmines at the same time, so he wasn't being as effective for sweeping for landmines, and sure enough, he stepped on a landmine and blew his left leg off. We went and visited him in the hospital, and military people are kind of, I don't know, our humor is a little different, I guess. We're all there super sympathetic towards him, like, oh man, we're glad you're okay. And he's like, oh no, man, it's all right. It's my left leg below the knee. I can still drive. I'll still be okay, And he was in very good spirits about it for having his leg blown off. But yeah. I had my first child born when I was in Afghanistan, so I was gone for the first 5 months of her life while she was born, but came home and it was all good. Got questions for me, or?